Welcome to Clement's Family Farm. I'm Shane, and this is my homestead, and I've been making vanilla for about 28 years. So I wanted to share some of my experience with you guys today and talk about some of the most common questions and answers. I do have a vanilla series out that I've been doing for the last 6 years, and it's my method with vacuum sealing. So if you're not familiar with it, go watch those videos and you can see my method of making vanilla, because there are tons of methods. But you can follow us here on YouTube, or you can go over to Facebook if you have a Facebook page. I do have a Clement's Family Farm business page over there for our homestead. So let's get on with the video.
You're a monster.
I can see the truth. No, you don't have to lie to me. Don't fill your head with things and think you're free. I can smell the fear. I think you made it clear. Yeah, I could be rude, be in a mood. I could be rotten. I could be cool, man, like a fool, but never forgotten. Creeping in the dark, waiting for you. You won't like what you see. Yeah, I feel like a monster. Here to haunt you. I've become your nightmare, slipping in your dreams. I'm the definition of the worst kind of me. Yeah, I feel like a monster.
Alright, vanilla extract. Back to basics. Questions and answers. I'm going to try to keep this simple and keep it real. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I see a lot of questions out there on social media about making vanilla extract. There's a lot of confusion because there are so much information, and there are people kind of misguiding a little bit and doing their own little thing. I do make vanilla extract, and I've been doing it for a while. Basic vanilla extract that some people are missing. I'm gonna try to answer some of those questions. I went through, probably about 6 different Facebook pages and groups looking at all the questions that kept continually coming up. So that's what I'm gonna do today. I'm hoping to answer some of those basic questions that keep coming up and get them all here in one video. All right, so when I first started making vanilla extract 28 years ago, first question I asked myself, why am I doing this? One of the reasons was tired of the store-bought vanilla extract. It had too much of a chemical taste to it, and then the cost was going up. I was just not pleased with it. I'm sure a lot of you are too. Once you try homemade vanilla, you'll never buy it again in the store. Why did I need to do it? Well, I started making things from our homestead, like olives. We cured and processed our own olives for eating. And it was an old homeschool recipe from grandmother, and it started getting me interested in some of these home recipes that we can make ourselves instead of buying it in the store. And vanilla was just one of those. I started researching the history of vanilla, and not necessarily the history, but recipes, the history behind some of these recipes. And everything I came up with was Grandma threw some beans in a jar, grabbed whatever alcohol she had on the shelf, poured it in there, sealed it up, and put it in a cold, dark shelf in the cupboard. That was just the way it was. No reasons behind it, no nothing. And back in the day, they didn't have the resources like we did, and I've come to find out after writing my cookbook, because I'm trying to find old recipes and stuff like that that don't exist anymore. Once the people pass, those recipes are gone. But some of the reasons why we don't have those recipes is because reading and writing wasn't that common. And it was only the educated people. It wasn't the common people that were had the reading and writing skills. So some of that didn't get written down. It is still kind of common with some of the older generation today. It's the daughters writing down the recipes because grandma never wrote it down. So anyway, so I had a hard time finding recipes for the vanilla. Why I'm making it is because we bake a lot and we make other things. So the one thing I wanted to reduce was the alcohol taste, and I wanted to increase the vanilla flavor. Two things that vanilla is used for on the top of the list is baking and flavored drinks. Alcohol drinks or teas or anything like that. So those are the two top things. The next thing is people are selling it, they're gifting it, some infusions. So there are several different reasons why you could be making extract. I want to make the best, strongest vanilla flavored extract I can with the least amount of alcohol bite to it or flavor to it. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing it. I know a lot of people make it and want to gift it as something, as a hobby, as a crafter. That's awesome. That's how I started off. I started off making it 28 years ago, and then Christmas time I wanted to give somebody something that we had made, and vanilla was one of it. It just happened to be a hit. People started asking for it, so it was starting to cost me a lot of money, so I started charging. It just kind of grew from my friends and family and the locals here. Oils and infusions are some of those things that people are starting to use vanilla for. With the oils and infusions, I recommend everybody making an extract first and then adding the extract to your infusion or your oil. One of the big ones is honey. So I'm a beekeeper, I'm a hobbyist beekeeper. So I see a lot of people putting vanilla beans inside the honey trying to infuse it in there. I don't recommend that because you're introducing some water molecules which could lead the honey to fermenting. The best way to do it is make an extract and then add a little bit of extract to your honey and swirl it around and let it infuse that way. A couple reasons why I don't do that. That one being the first one. But the other one is vanilla beans need alcohol to extract. They're not water-based. If you ever fill a vanilla bean, they've got an oily texture to them and so forth. They need the alcohol to break down those oils and extract that flavor. You're not going to do that in honey. You might get a little bit of flavor in there and everything, but you're only going to be pulling off maybe 3 to 10% of that flavor from that bean. So for me, you're kind of wasting the bean when you can actually use it for making the extract and then just add the extract to that, and then you can use the bean for other things. So anyway, cost of the imitation crap. Yeah, the stuff in the stores is junk and the prices keep going up. Making it yourself, it does seem like a lot of money in the beginning because things are expensive, but once you try your own vanilla, homemade vanilla, you'll never buy the other stuff again, and you'll save yourself a little bit of money. Kind of. You'll like it so much, you'll use more of it. That's what happened to my house. We like the vanilla in our house. We don't even measure it anymore. We just pour it in. And technically with homemade vanilla versus store-bought vanilla, if it calls for a tablespoon of vanilla with homemade stuff, you can use half of that in your recipe and still get a great flavor. The flavors of the homemade stuff is so much better. That's why I make vanilla. I absolutely love it. Number one question, vanilla extract recipe. What is the best recipe for vanilla extract? So this is a really loaded question because there's a lot of people making extract and they're doing things their own way, which is fine. They could do it that way, but it's kind of misleading because there are a standard for getting pure vanilla extract. So by law, you can only call your vanilla, pure vanilla extract is if you follow FDA guidelines. If you don't follow the guidelines, you cannot legally call your extract pure vanilla. That's just the way the laws are here in the States. So if you're just adding 3 beans and calling yourself pure vanilla extract, it's not. So with that being said, I'm going to show you what the standards are, and then you can move up from there and experiment from there. So FDA, and the reason why the FDA is here is to protect the consumer, to making sure they're getting either consistent and good quality. The other reason is it also helps protect the shelf life of your extract, because if you deviate any lower than what the minimum standard is, you can actually reduce your shelf life of your extract. So there's a lot of reasons why the FDA steps in. One is protect the consumer for shelf life and actually protect your product. So number 1, FDA standard is 13.35 ounces by weight of vanilla beans to 128 fluid ounces of fluid alcohol. And the minimum alcohol proof content is 35% alcohol by volume, or 70 proof is the minimum. You can go up from there. So to break that down to 1 ounce of alcohol, it's in smaller quantities, it's 0.1043 ounces by weight of vanilla beans to 1 ounce of alcohol. So you can see it gets really pretty tedious, but the most simplest recipe out there, because people are buying like 1 ounce at a time, is 1 ounce by weight to 8 ounce, or 1 cup of 70 proof or higher alcohol. So that's pretty simple. Technically, it's 0.83 ounces if you follow the math on this, but let's just keep it really simple here. 1 ounce per 8 ounce of fluid. Okay, so let's talk about this 13.5 ounce, or this the 1 ounce per 8 ounce volume. So a lot of people are getting confused with this and they ask the question, how many beans does it take to make vanilla extract? It's not how many beans it is, it's the weight of the beans. So what I have here is Madagascar grade A gourmet beans, and let's just go through the steps and taking a weight on these beans, and let's see how it is. So get yourself a nice kitchen scale. Everything I'm using today, I'll leave a link down below so you can see what I'm using. These are beautiful beans. I love them. They smell really good. So let's just take a few and weigh them. So hopefully you can see right here. Okay, so right now we have a little over 1.1 ounce. So that's 7 beans. Let's try this again. All right, so we have 1.1 ounce again, and there's only 6 beans. So you can see there's a little bit of a difference there in the beans. It's the same weight, but here we've got, in the same category, We have 1.1 with 7 beans, and then 1.1 with 6 beans. So you can see it's by weight. This is the most consistent that you can get making vanilla beans. So this would be a batch. There's 1 ounce, 1.1 ounce of vanilla beans. I mean, you could cut it off a little bit, reweigh it to get your 1 ounce, but it's not worth it. So anyway, there's your 1 ounce of beans. Now, to 8 ounces or 1 cup. So most of these mason jars have a ounce scale right on the side, or you can use your measuring cup that you have in the cupboard. So that's 8 ounces of fluid and 1 ounce of vanilla beans. This will make a single fold FDA pure vanilla extract. So a lot of people ask about the headspace because they're only getting 1 ounce of beans and they're going to use the 8 ounce fluid. So they're always asking about headspace in the jar. So when you put these beans in the jar, you can either cut them. We'll talk about the different methods, but the typical recipe was take a whole beans like this and shove them in the jar and then cover them with alcohol. Well, 8 ounces and with these long beans aren't going to really cover them. There's another solution to that. A lot of people are wanting to put more alcohol in there to bring up that volume. Now you're diluting what the recipe calls for. So remember, 1 ounce to 8 ounces. If you put more alcohol in there to try to cover them, now you're taking away from the recipe and you're diluting the vanilla extract, and now you can't call it pure vanilla extract anymore. So here's a simple solution. You could just take these beans, ball them up, put them in the bottom, try to cover them, but these are going to want to expand and come out of the fluid. It's just not a simple solution. You can use marbles to displace that fluid area. So I use marbles in many different things for making pie crust and brewing meads. So the only thing I recommend is using only glass marbles. Get yourself some marbles, clean them real good, use a little bit of sanitizer on them. I'll put a link to the sanitizer I use, and then all you got to do is, I have marbles specifically for baking and doing stuff just like this because they're clean and sanitized already. But all you need to do is fill the jar. You can fill it all the way up. I got one bean that's wanting to stick up, so I'm just going to fill the jar up so there's no, now it's full. So now you've not diluted the recipe, you've filled up that headspace, all the vanilla beans are covered by the fluid, plus you got a little bit of marbles in there to help beat on the outsides of those pots. So that would be considered a pure vanilla extract. Headspace is taken care of. It looks pretty too. I mean, look at that. So that's a simple solution. So you don't have to add a bunch more fluid to it. The other solution is buy yourself another ounce of beans and then put them in there and top it off with some more fluid. Pretty simple. So that's the basic recipe for single fold extract, is that 1 ounce per 8 ounce of fluid. The FDA has a double fold, triple fold, quadruple fold, and it keeps going. And I believe I think there's even like a 13 or something. But once you get above the triple fold, you're talking about a whole nother category for high-end bakers or people that are have real sensitivity to what they're baking and their fluid. So they need less fluid, more flavor in what they're doing, because what they're baking is water sensitive or fluid sensitive. And it's more, you start getting into more commercial ways of trying to extract the fluid. It becomes, I mean, you could do it. It's not that big of a deal, but so to get those extra folds, so a fold, this is a single fold. A double fold is 2 ounces by weight of vanilla to 8 ounces. So see, the only thing that they doubled was the vanilla. So a triple fold would be 3 ounces to the same amount of fluid. So you can see how that works. They're just doubling the weight of the vanilla beans for the same amount of fluid. So that's when you hear a single fold, that's what this is. Double fold is 2 ounces per 8 ounces. Triple fold is 3 ounces per 8 ounces. So that's how it works. So when you hear people say folds, that's what it's doing. All right, third question. What alcohol is the best? Vodka, rum, bourbon, whiskey, they all work. Everybody's got different taste buds, so this is a personal preference to everybody. They all work good, they all work in their own little different direction. Personally, I stick with vodka and rum. I really like those. I don't like whiskey, moonshine, the bourbons and stuff like that. I just don't do that. But there's other people that do, and they swear by it, and that's great. I do recommend the people starting out and the basics of it, so you get yourself an idea of what a good vanilla extract is, good strong one, is sticking with a vodka or rum for your first go around, and a white rum or a white vodka, no flavoring to it, just straight up vodka or rum, and you'll get a basic, really good vanilla extract. I personally go to the coconut rums. So you get into the spices and the flavoring a little bit. You got to be careful because some of these spiced or flavored rums can overpower your vanilla. So now you've got all this vanilla in there that you're trying to get, and then you're adding another flavor to it, which is taken away from that vanilla. So, and then you have some spices like cinnamon. Cinnamon's one of those ones. Too much of it will overpower the vanilla and you won't even taste it, which is kind of sad. I have failed at making an extract. Did I still use it? Yeah. But you can mess it up. Because, like I said, you can overpower the vanilla with certain flavors and stuff. I tended to go to the coconut. It's a really light flavor. And it gives it a little bit of sweetness to the end, which enhances the vanilla flavor. Sometimes that coconut goes away, and sometimes it doesn't. But usually it's the vanilla you get first when you take a little taste of it, and then the coconut comes in at the end. If you don't like coconut, don't use it, but I like it because it does give it that good strong vanilla flavor. And then it's a hit and miss with the coconut. My extract, if you tasted it, if you did not know there was coconut in it, you would never guess it. I know there's coconut in it, so I taste it. So anyway, all the alcohols work. That's totally up to you. But for your first recipe, I would stick with a white rum or a vodka. What proof do I use? 70 proof. 35% alcohol by volume equals 70 proof. So if you didn't know this, because some of the labels on the alcohols are either ABV, which is alcohol by volume, and they give you a percentage, or they go by proof. So to get the proof, all you gotta do is double the ABV. If they're just giving you the percentage, double it and it'll tell you what the proof is. So 35% is 70 proof, 40% is 80 proof, 45% 90 proof, and then 50% 100 proof. So that's how you get it. I only recommend up to 100 proof because like I said, I'm trying to get the best vanilla flavor that I can without that alcohol bite or flavor to it. I use a new Amsterdam vodka, which is 100 proof. I really like it because it's smooth and it makes great extracts, and it doesn't have a huge bite. Even though it's 100 proof, it doesn't have that cringe factor when you're tasting it. You can use higher proofs. I've seen people use Everclear, and then when you get in some of the whiskeys and moonshines, they're a little bit higher in proof. I've seen people dilute them down so they can get into this range. That's fine, but you do run the risk if you don't do it right is being below the 70 proof, and you could decrease your shelf life or even start causing fermenting if it's too low in here, if some bacteria or some other sugars got in here and do that. So I just don't recommend doing that at all personally. Yeah, this is what the recommendations are. The proof will actually increase the extraction a little bit. It's not a whole lot, but it does increase how fast it does extract from your vanilla beans, that flavor from the vanilla beans. So there is a little bit of an advantage to that, but remember, when you're going to the higher proofs, you're gonna have the risk of getting that alcohol bite or flavor to it, even in your finished product, your finished extract. So just remember, if you're going higher, you're gonna have that bite to it. So anyway, that's your alcohol. Okay, I hope I covered the alcohols pretty good because they all work. It really is personal preference and personal taste. I try to tell people with the alcohol, because I'm not a drinker, this much alcohol would probably last me all year. But I tell people that aren't alcohol drinkers, try a sip of it. If they could take another sip of it without cringing or anything like that, you could probably use it really well and it'll make a good extract. If you're taking a sip of it and it's just like god awful, then I wouldn't use it for an extract. It's going to be that way when you make the extract too. I'm not a drinker, and I started off with vodka, and because that's what I was told to do. And I was told, I'm not going to name brands, but I started off with the brand that everybody said to use. Man, you can hardly even drink it, even a little sip. And that's how I made my extract for 2 years. Then I thought, well, let me try this. I found another vodka, which was the new Amsterdam. I wouldn't name that brand because I like it, but it's 100 proof. But you can drink it. You might cringe a little bit, but it was smooth and it was tolerable. So you could take another drink of it. It was perfect for making extract. But anyway, that's my take on this. I hope that really does answer these questions. All right, question number 5. What type of vanilla beans is the best? Big question. Madagascar, Indonesian, Tahitian, Ugandan, Hawaiian, Papua New Guinea. They all work. Go to the websites and look at the flavoring profile for each one. But the most common one is the Madagascar bean. So that's the most common one. It's a great bean. It's got great flavor. It's strong. I prefer the Madagascar. But if I can't get my hands on them, I usually grab whatever's available next. Usually it's the Mexican style or the Tahitians. So that's what I usually do, but they all work. You're just gonna have to look at the different profiles to see what you want because everybody's taste is different. The beans do play a factor on how dark they come out and how strong the flavor comes out, on how much vanillin or whatever it is that comes out into your extract. So it may not be as, depending on the bean, it may not be as strong, but it's got great flavors and different notes in the flavors. You can't go wrong with Madagascars. Along with that, we'll talk about the different style of beans that the distributors are offering now. So we got bits and pieces. What's bits and pieces? It's usually just like this, little cut off ends. And they might be short pieces or whatever. They're mixed in. The bean fell apart during curing, whatever. Then we got grade C. This is a new one for me. I've never seen it on the market, but when I was doing some research, I saw grade C come up. Those could be a little bit bigger pieces. They may be split beans. They may not have all the seeds in them. It's kind of one of those things. I don't see it very often, but I did see it the other day. So I thought I'd throw it up there. They may be irregular, horseshoe shaped. And then you got the most common, which is the grade B extract. And I'm just gonna go into grade A because these two right here are the most common for all of them. The difference between grade A and grade B is not the flavor, it's the size. So these beans right here, these are Madagascar grade A beans. So they've got a pretty good, decent size to them in length, but you're gonna have to go to your distributor on who you're buying your vanilla from, because each one has a different size category on that grading. They may be a little shorter, a little different than the other guy. Check your distributor and see how they're grading this, because each farmer grades a little different too. So the grade A's are within a certain distance. Grade B is the same bean, just it's shorter or may have an imperfection in it. The grade A's are supposed to be gourmet, which are pretty for decoration and gourmet baking, stuff like that. The grade B's, they may have maybe a little bit drier, a split in them, they just don't look as beautiful. And typically your distributor will have the grade B's at a little bit cheaper price. But check those prices on those. That's the difference between grade A and grade B. And then you've got the giant vanilla beans. I've seen them, they're this big, and people are going crazy over them. In the plant industry, giant is not necessarily better. You look at elephant garlic, it's bigger, it's less flavor. It's not as strong as the smaller ones. It's got good flavor, but it's not as strong. It's kind of the same thing with the vanilla beans. Bigger doesn't mean better. So I see a lot of people getting hung up on size. Oh, my size, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Now remember, check with your distributor and see what their ranking is on their sizes. If you're not getting what you're paying for, you need to contact them right away so they can correct it. But if you're getting those sizes in between there, just check those numbers. Some of these sizes, I get grade A's and they might be a little bit shorter, but not all the same size. Don't get hung up on that. Just check your order package, make sure you're getting what you're paid for one, and then go from there. So I hope that covers the basics of the vanilla bean and the different grades. And then you've got, the next question after that is, can I mix my beans? Yeah, you can mix any one of these if you want. I try to be consistent with my vanilla when I'm making, so I don't mix them. And I prefer the Madagascars, so I don't usually buy the other ones to have on hand to mix. I go through vanilla pretty quick. So I don't have a bunch of vanilla bottles sitting here in a bunch of different varieties. I might do a big test one day using the same type of alcohol and then trying all the vanilla beans and seeing how they come out in a taste test. I'm going to do a blind taste test, but with other people, get their honest opinion on all of these different styles of beans. So you can mix them. You guys are creators and crafters. Do what you want. If you want to call it pure vanilla, as long as you stay within the recipe guidelines, you're good. When I make my vanilla, I'm usually about 1.5 folds per 8 ounces of fluid. I still call mine a single fold. You can always give your client more, but you can't give them less. So I still call it a single fold, but I give them a 1.5 folds type of vanilla, so it's a good strong vanilla. Question number 7, common question. What jars do I use for making extract? Small, medium, large, or pretty or anything like this. I know everybody wants to put the pretty ones in there. Just using the ball jars is probably the best way to go. But they have all the different sizes. It all depends on the recipe you're using. If you're just using the 1 ounce, then the smaller jars. I see a lot of people going to the small jars that they're gonna gift away in, and they're filling those up. They're doing the calculations and filling those up. I happen to use these 12 ounce sauce jars for my vanilla. Now I'm not gonna make up my recipe, put them in here, and then have them sit on the shelf and brew. The reason why is I'm gonna shake them. You need to shake your vanilla extract to get that process going. Even grandma shook it every now and then. So instead of shaking every one of these jars or these bottles, I'm just gonna shake one. Or actually, this is a half-gallon jar. I usually make about 6 to 10 of these half-gallon jars, and then I'm only shaking these half-gallon jars. This half-gallon jar will make 4.5 of these 12 ounce bottles. So I'm either gonna shake 4.5 of those or one of these. So I choose to use the ball jars. You can use any jar you want with a sealing lid. You need to have a sealing lid on it so you don't get anything going into it and nothing coming out of it. So for making extract, I mean, you can even use the alcohol bottle that you got. If you know what your measurements are, you get the measurements right and you put everything in there. It's just a little harder to get the vanilla beans out. It's still possible to get the vanilla beans out, but I do like the wide mouth jars. They're easily available, well, kind of. You can get lids for them. So I use these lids. They've got the coating on them, so there's no metal touching them. And then I use these plastic rings. So you can use the metal rings. I just prefer the plastic rings because you're going to be opening and closing these because everybody's going to sniff and smell it and taste it. I know you are because I do it. So you'll get a little alcohol or extract on these threads here. So with the metal rings, they tend to stick and kind of cement on there. With the plastic rings, they still do it, but not as bad, and they're easier to pop off. So these plastic lids aren't good for sealing though. I'm kind of disappointed in that. So you kind of have to use both of these and go from there. So I prefer the ball jars because I can shake this instead of shaking all those. But it's really up to you. The other thing I'm seeing people do is they're going to the art and craft store and buying jars that have these pretty lids and got the sealers on there. A lot of those jars aren't made for human consumption. They're made for crafting. People are having problems with those jars breaking on them because they're not the thicker tempered glass that these jars are. Keep that in consideration. Make sure you're using a food grade jar. So now how are you going to process your beans? So you got your vanilla beans. So how do I use my vanilla beans in my extract? Okay, so there are several different ways you can use your beans. None of them are wrong. Some of them are going to increase your finish time. Each one of these will increase your finish time by quite a bit. So the typical way is just a whole vanilla bean, just like this, shoved in a jar and then sit on the shelf. The other way is people cut the tips off so that the fluid can get in there. So let me explain. That alcohol has to penetrate this outer shell and get all the way on the inside and then extract back out. That's how you get your flavoring. So there's seeds on the inside. People call them caviar and they want to use it later on, and that's fine. The other way is to cut the ends off. That kind of breaks the seal on it. And they can still get the caviar out. That works a little bit better than this, but still that fluid has to get into that inside and then back out. That's why the FDA considers this method a year on the shelf, or a year making before it's finished. The next way is cutting off the tips and then taking the bean. I'll show you with this one. So taking the bean and then just splitting it right down the center. So taking the ends off and then splitting it right down the center, and then you've got this open bean cavity that the fluid can get inside, and it flows so much better around that bean. So let me show you this right here. As you can see, there's a fold there, and that bean is folded over, and you can scrape the seeds out just like this, and it opens up that fold, and then it exposes those fibers to the bean. Okay, so now you're getting more surface contact to that alcohol, which is going to speed up your process to a finished extract once again. So that's another method. The only problem I've had with this in the past is once they start to relax a little bit, they close up like this, and then fluid can still get in there, but it's not as flowing through there as freely. So I don't do this method anymore. What I do now is I take the bean, I cut the ends off, and then I take the razor knife, and right where that seam is, or that fold is, I split it right down the center. Now you get rid of that fold, and now you have an open bean, and I scrape out the seeds. Now you've got surface to contact with your fluid and the bean pod much greater, and you don't have that chance of it folding. I've done some testing on this, and this is actually the best way. It's a lot more labor intensive. That's why I do it. Well, it's not, I don't do it because it's labor intensive, but I do it because I get a little bit faster finished extract. With my method, you can see how I do everything. With my method, go to my playlist and you can see how I vacuum seal and everything, because I get a finished extract within 4 months. I could probably finish it in 3 months with my testing that I do. But I usually push it to 4 months, and I got a great vanilla extract. So anyway, you can go back to that if you like. So that's how I do it. I split it down the sides. All these methods will work. So however you want to do it will work. It's just each step just takes you a little bit farther ahead in the finished, faster deal. So now you figured out which method you're going to use, and remember, your recipe is for that 8 ounces. So if you're scraping out the seeds, or 1 ounce of beans, so if you're scraping out the seeds, you need to add those seeds back into your extract, your fluid. So if I took that whole 1 ounce and did this method, I'd have to put everything in there to still call it pure vanilla. Now if I'm going to take the seeds and use them for something else, you're going to have to take however much weight you took out of there and add that much in bean pod to make sure your recipe's good. I don't use the seeds or anything for anything else. I just put everything in the jar and I don't have to worry about it. So just keep that in mind. If you're sticking to the recipe, you need to put all the seeds and everything, even the ends in there, because that was part of your original weight. I know some people, after it's been extracting for 6 or 8 weeks, they want to use the seeds, and they come in, they squeeze them out. Okay, you're just taking away part of that weight for the recipe to finish out. So just keep that in mind. I don't mess with my beans or anything while they're extracted. Once they're finished and you've got a good solid extract, I can call it pure vanilla, and at that point I could do whatever I want with it. I could take the seeds out, I can scrape these out, and then we're good. That's whole with the tips cut off, split down one side, split down both sides, split down the middle, and scrape the seeds out. So that's all the different ways of doing it. The other way is chopping them. You can use the blender and chop up the beans, right from the get-go. Just throw them in the blender, chop them up, and put them in your extract, and you're good. It's going to speed it up that much faster. A lot of people don't believe in that because they want to use the beans for decoration and visual. Personally, I do this. I put them in the jar. I let them sit for 6 weeks. When they sit for 6 weeks, they get a little softer and they expand. Once they do that, then I put them in the blender and I do a soft chop. I pull out a couple good beans for decoration because all my bottles have a couple of these beans all the way in them. Can't see it in the bottles right now, but I do it for decoration for the client. There's no value to it other than the physical looking at it and it's pretty. I put them in the blender after I remove those long ones, and then I do a rough chop on them. So I chop them up. That breaks up the ends and cuts them down just a little bit and gives it more surface area and kind of beats on the outside, kind of like the marbles will do with these beans. That's all the methods that I know, and they're all effective. It all depends on how much effort you want to put into it and how fast you want to get your extract. All right, question number 9. How long does it take to make extract? Big thing, y'all gotta have patience. This is not a fast thing. Like I said, I make it in 4 months. Still not fast. Everybody wants to open them, smell them, taste them, do all that stuff. It takes time. The more labor you put into it, the faster it'll happen. Typically it's 1 year. Follow the simple recipe. It'll take 1 year to make and so forth. It's the more labor invested, the faster the time. I'll keep saying that because that's just how it is. So I do testing and sampling as I'm doing it because I want to make sure my beans are done. I go over that in my vanilla series, but here it's been, I don't know, 2 or 3 months since I made the last one, and these have been sitting in here that long, and these beans here have not changed color. And this was my 10 and 11 and 11 and 13 weeks at that time when I was doing the testing, and from that time, which was a few months ago till now, they've never changed colors. So in that many weeks with the vacuum seal method that I use, those beans are fully spent, giving out whatever they're going to give out, and they're done. I tasted it, and you could kind of barely taste a hint of vanilla, but that's it. So when I want to make sure my beans are done. So that's how I test them. So you're basically looking at a year. If you're doing this and you don't have a vacuum sealer and you're not using that method, it's going to be anywhere between probably 6 to 9 months for a finished extract, depending on which method here you use. I hope that kind of answered that. That's a pretty simple one. More labor, faster finish time. So the next big one is, how do you store your beans? So this is a common question when people are ordering beans but they don't have their alcohol for some reason and they need to store them. So don't store your beans in the freezer or the refrigerator. Most of them come in a vacuum sealed bag. They'll last you a few weeks in this vacuum sealed bag. Ask your distributor who you're buying them from how long they recommend they leave them in there. Most of these people will tell you if you're going to store them for a long time, number one answer to that is in alcohol. So a lot of you are buying these beans and you're waiting a couple weeks. You have a couple weeks to go get your alcohol so you can start making extract when you get them. The only circumstances like me, I ordered several pounds of vanilla last year, and I just happened to be going on vacation. I don't go on vacation. I've been on vacation over 18 years. With this COVID thing, I had the opportunity to go on vacation, and I was having weight loss surgery at the same time, or when I came back from vacation. So I had all these beans that come in, I just wasn't in the mood to do it, and I had too much going on, so I needed to store them. The best way to store them was in a jar, just like this, and then I filled the tops of them with alcohol. That's the best way to store beans. It'll last indefinitely, just like that, until you're ready to use them. Just remember, when you're doing storing like that, the fluid in there, when you pull them out and start making it, it needs to be divided up between the batches that you're making, because you are extracting from those beans. So part of that extraction from each one of those beans is in that fluid. So you need to break it up evenly between your batches to make it still a pure vanilla. So keep that in mind too. That's the number one way to store your beans, is fill the top with alcohol. I have to say this as a disclaimer, because I have gotten this question several times. Can I use isopropyl alcohol? No, you cannot. Isopropyl alcohol is a rubbing alcohol or burning alcohol that is not meant for human consumption. You need to use a drinking alcohol that is meant for human consumption. So any of those vodkas, rums, bourbons, whiskeys, whatever you've got will work. Not isopropyl alcohol. It doesn't matter what grade it is. No isopropyl alcohol. Sad to say, but I do get to ask that question, even for storing. Question number 11. How do you store your vanilla extract? This is a loaded question, and it's all over the board. Cool, dark place, on the countertop, out of direct sunlight, indirect sunlight. So let this sink in for a minute. Vanilla beans are cured in the sun. So these are exposed to the sun every day until they're cured. The sun exposure to the outsides of these has already happened. Let that sink in a little bit. People are saying, well, it kills the enzymes, this and that, and it'll distract from the flavor. I ain't had that happen. I'm a hobbyist beekeeper. I know about enzymes because I pay attention to it for my honey. There are beneficial enzymes in honey. People are buying honey for those beneficial enzymes, for their allergies and health reasons. I don't know anybody buying vanilla for the beneficial enzymes in them. They're buying vanilla for the flavor. If it's stored in the sunlight and killing some of those enzymes, as long as it's not destroying the flavor, I think you're good. But we'll go right back to what Grandma did. She pulled the stuff off the shelf, she put it in the cupboard. One of the reasons why they put it in the cupboard? To keep the kids away from it, and to keep the adults away from it, from drinking it. So they used to hide it in the cupboard. I've seen a lot of debates back and forth, but I like looking at mine. I did some tests with it a couple of years ago because I do leave mine in the sunlight, right in the window. So I did 3 jars. I put one in the cupboard, put one on the counter, and then I put one in the direct sunlight, because 6 years ago I started putting it in the direct sunlight. And the reason why I put it in the direct sunlight was when the sun would come up in the morning, it would heat up the window and heat up the jars. That actually helped heat up the inside of those jars and expand those vanilla beans. And then at night when it cooled down, it contracted. A lot of you guys are using sous vide. It's kind of doing the same thing, but I'm not using electricity, I'm using the sunlight. If you're worried about the UV rays hitting it, put a protective film on it or put a little barrier in there. I've got these little plastic barriers I could put in front of there. It's still going to work. I have found in the direct sunlight the color is a little bit lighter. I'm not concerned with color, I'm concerned with flavor. So was my flavor different? It was a little different because the one that was in the window was smoother versus the one that was in the cupboard. So there is a little bit of difference from doing that, but I'm gonna tell you, the flavor was incredible. If I'd done a blind taste test on it, you probably would have picked the one that was in the window. So that's my opinion on it. I use direct sunlight and they're beautiful. The other reason I do this is because you need to shake these jars. And if it's out here and you're looking at it, you're more likely to shake them than if it's in the cupboard. I come in this room every day. This is kind of my office, my hobby room, my workshop. I come in here every day. I see them. I give them a good shake. And then go from there. If I'm not looking at them, even with me looking at them every day, I still miss a few days or a week or two. Because it gets tiring after a while. The enthusiasm there in the very beginning, it does, we're talking about months and then years. So you kind of drop off from that. So you're better off leaving them on the counter where you can see them either in direct sunlight or not direct sunlight. If they're in the cupboard, you're going to forget about them. That's just my take on it. You guys can decide what you want to do. Do some testing on your own. So, do I need to wear gloves? No. If you're doing this for hobby and gifting and stuff like that, you don't need to wear gloves. But I always recommend washing your hands and sanitizing your hands. With this COVID, everybody's doing that already. So there's really not to worry about bacteria. The alcohol is going to cover that up. But some of you may hold a license to sell. I hold a license to sell my vanilla extract. You need to look at your food handling regulations and rules. They will dictate whether you need to wear gloves or anything like that. The smell of this is wonderful. Don't mind getting it on my hands. I do wear gloves when I'm handling the razor blade because the glove will be the first thing that the razor blade hits before it hits my skin. I've never cut my fingers doing this. Some people see my videos, see me doing it, get a little worried. I've never cut my fingers doing this, but I do wear gloves. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Do I need to wear gloves? If you're holding the license, you need to check your regulations to see what it is and what the requirement is. But technically, no. If I can wear this as a perfume, I would. I absolutely love vanilla. All right, number 13. Can I reuse vanilla beans after making extract? Yes and no. So one of the questions I see, and I see a lot of answers out there, and people are saying they can make a second extract with your vanilla beans once you made your first one. Okay, you can attempt to do that if you want, but as you can see from my testing, there's nothing left in that bean if you're doing an extract correctly. If you're waiting for it to be finished and you're doing it correctly, there's not going to be anything left. There are some aromas to it and some of that, but you're not going to make another extract with it. That's the reality of it. I'm sorry, people, but they're not the everlasting vanilla bean. You find me a vanilla bean that I can keep making extract with, tell me about it. Put it in the comments because I want to buy from that guy. Because this stuff's expensive and it only goes so far. So I'm all game for the everlasting vanilla bean. So these aren't the everlasting vanilla beans, but they can be reused again. After I'm done extracting, I pull them out. I save the ones I'm going to use to beautify my bottles. And then I put mine in the dehydrator, which I have here. Dehydrate them overnight, pull them out, and then I grind them up, make a powder with them. From that powder, I don't know what other people use them for, but I make vanilla sugar. So I make a lot of vanilla sugar. So you can reuse them. So with the powder, I've seen some of the people use them for some baking stuff. Anyway, you can make vanilla sugar with it. It makes great vanilla sugar because the aroma is coming out and filling that. That's my preferred method. I don't like using fresh vanilla beans for making my vanilla sugar because, again, to get the most out of this vanilla bean, you need the alcohol to extract from. Sugar is not going to extract all that flavor out of that vanilla bean. It's only going to get a little bit, just like putting it in the honey. You're only going to get a little bit of that surface stuff out of there. You're not going to pull everything out of that pod, so you're kind of wasting a pod that could expand even farther. All right, number 14. Some of you get a little impatient and you're pulling your jars open at 6 weeks and you're asking yourself, why does this still smell and taste like alcohol? That smell, that taste may never go away. It all depends on your recipe, and the alcohols that you're using plays a big factor in that. Even with 70%, you still could have that alcohol bite at the end and a little bit of that smell. There's no guarantees. You could do a double fold. It might get rid of it, but it's not a guarantee. Some of you people are saying it's a guarantee. It's not a guarantee. There's no guarantee in doing this. Just keep in mind, that taste and that smell is gonna go away. Because when you're baking with it, alcohol burns off at 170 degrees. Water's at 210. So when you're baking with it, it's gonna be gone by the time your baked goods are gone. So when you're sitting there tasting it, don't worry so much about the alcohol taste and the smell. It will go away. Now when you get into some of the spiced rums and stuff, you know, the alcohol is going to go away, but you're going to get more of those flavors coming out when you bake. So just keep that in mind. So the biggest factor in this is your proof. Why is it there? If you're using a higher proof, the more likely you're going to have the alcohol taste and bite to it continue throughout your extract process. So you just got to have patience with this. I know I'm impatient too. I smell it, taste it, but I've been doing this long enough that I understand what's going on in my jars. And I will tell you, I've had same batches, because like I said, I do anywhere between 6 to 10 of these half-gallon jars, and even those 6 to 10 with the same alcohol and the same beans, they will taste a little different at sometimes. Some will have that bite, some won't. Some will be a little mellower, a little stronger. That's one of the reasons at the end of when I make my extract, I mix everything so it's all one size. All my bottles taste the same when I'm done with a batch. So I make these big batches, I mix everything so everything's really consistent. That way I know I write everything down every time I do it. My recipes have been the same, and I haven't had anything go wrong with them. So I know the formula is working really well. My customers seem to like it and everything. So that's why I kind of stuck with what I got. Move on to the next question. All right, so goes along with the impatience. Why is the color of my extract not dark? So false advertisement, because what you see in the store, not FDA regulated. Well, if it's made in the States it is, but some of these other ones are not. But even if it is FDA regulated, FDA regulations allows us as extractors to still call it pure vanilla, and we can add sugars to it. We can add colors to it and still call it pure extract. I've seen so many out-of-state distributors selling the extract that are way below what our standards are and adding colors to it. I mean, you've got dark molasses that they can add to it and still be good. They are adding colorants to it. I've watched some of these distributors or growers that are selling this. You can see them on YouTube. You YouTube some of these people, and they're showing you. They're showing you what they're doing, and they're adding stuff to it. So when you're looking at it on the shelf, it's kind of a false advertisement. But it really does depend on the bean, on how dark it is, and your recipe, because each bean, different types will either be lighter or darker. So don't get hung up on what the color is. Don't be impatient with it. If it's not coming out, just give it a little bit of time. And the key thing about vanilla extract is flavor. So the color is not that big of a deal, in my case. You can see this is 70 proof, and my color with the Madagascar beans is great, and I don't add nothing to it. If it's not dark right away, just let it steep a little bit more. I am dyslexic, and it does come out in some of my charts. I made all these charts. I was writing them down. When I messed up, I wasn't going to start over. So I'm dyslexic, severely dyslexic actually. So reading and writing is really tough for me. And even doing this was tough for me, even though I had it written down on other cards. I was still looking at it and still wrote it backwards or cattywampus. So that's why you see some of those, or I missed words. All right, can you over extract vanilla and oversteep vanilla beans? No, you can't. You can leave them in there indefinitely. People are saying they've got beans in there for 35 years. Yeah, it's gonna keep going. You can't over extract them. It's not gonna hurt anything. Like I said with the testing and everything, the beans are gonna come to a point where they're not giving off anymore, which is right around that 1 year mark. Some of the beans, maybe a year and a half. Depending on your method, it could be as soon as 4 months or 13 weeks on my testing that I had. Those beans are finished. So once they're finished and given out extracting, they're no longer used sitting in the jar. Pull them out, dry them, and use them for sugar or powder. I had tests where I had jars. I say a test. I didn't intend for it to be a test, but what had happened was I had made up a bunch of vanilla jars, extract jars like this, and I had them sitting on the shelf in my counter. I had one on the counter. Well, we ended up moving and doing a bunch of things, and a couple of the jars got stuck in the back. Well, 5 years later, I found those jars because I moved into this house and started moving things around, and I found those jars. I had the date on them and everything. So I had a jar that was my current recipe, same vanilla beans, same methods, same everything. The process was all the same. And what I did is I took a sample of that one I had found from 5 years ago, and then a sample of the one that I had now, and I'm thinking, I was mind blown because I was like, oh man, that's been sitting there for 5 years. This is going to be incredible, different than what I'm currently doing. Sadly, I was disappointed. I pulled it out, I took a taste of it, and I was like, wow, that's no different. Maybe a little different, but not much. So I tasted my current stuff. I was like, wow. So then when my partner got home, I made her test it. She was like the same way. So it was the older stuff, the 5 year stuff was a little different. Was it worth leaving it on the shelf for 5 years? No. I could have been making vanilla sugar with those beans. I could have been processing, I could have put it in jars, I could have been using it. Leaving it on the shelf that long, to me, it wasn't worth it. The test was good because I use all the same stuff all the time. Can you over extract them? No. Alright, so question number 17. What is a mother jar? Loaded question because I've really only heard this within the last 2 years. When I first started making vanilla, never even heard of it. I do ferment vegetables and make vinegars and wines and stuff like that. And I know there's a little confusion out there when people start calling mother jars, because in the fermenting world, there is such a thing called a mother, or even in yeast, a mother. It's for fermenting. They need that to ferment, and it's kind of like a starter for your fermenting. That's a big thing. In vanilla extract, you're not fermenting at all. I have to believe people start calling it a mother jar because Grandma used to just take beans and throw them in there. No rhyme or reason. Just throw beans in there and top it off. Well, people were starting to take once they were done extracting, took all those beans out, gifted the fluid, put them in nice little bottles, and then they put the finished beans inside of a bigger jar, topped it off with any type of alcohol they had, and put it on the shelf. And they just called it a mother jar. Well, I'm starting to see people put fresh beans in a jar and topping it off with alcohol and calling it a mother jar. So I'm seeing this across the board. So I don't know what a mother jar is. Is it extraction? Are you doing a fresh extraction? Are you using used beans? It's kind of across the board. I don't do it because I use my beans up and let them go. I'm in and I'm out with them. I don't need to save anything because I got great extract and that's what I'm using. But yeah, a mother jar, I believe, is just a catch-all for people want to throw. I mean, it could be, I'm making a batch, I've got 7 beans to an ounce, and I got a couple extra beans that I don't want to put in with my current extract. So I start a mother jar and I throw those extra 2 beans in there. And then as I keep buying beans, I keep continuing to add to it. So that's what it could be. That's my take on it. Best gifting bottles. I see this question all the time. What's the best gifting bottle? That depends on how much you like the person. You can either go the 4 ounce or 8 ounce. Amazon sells them. I'll find a link, put them down in there. I used to use the little small bottles for gifting all the time. They're great. Amber or clear, that's up to you. I personally like to see the fluid and show my customers this beautiful vanilla extract. It's just beautiful, smells good. So I tend to go the clear. A typical 8 ounce bottle is a great gifting size for Christmas parties. If you're doing favors at like a baby shower or something like that, I'd probably go to the 4 ounce size. Just kind of spread it out a little bit. I mean, to me, the vanilla is precious. I really don't want to give it out. Well, I don't anymore. I sell it. What's the best gifting bottles? That's up to you. There's a lot of pretty ones, really clever ones, different shaped. The only thing I'm going to suggest to you guys is make sure it is FDA approved or for human or food approved, FDA food approved bottles. A lot of the chemical bottles out there, which are these amber ones, they are approved for human consumption and for food. So just make sure that they're rated for food and you'll be okay. We'll go on to number 19. Can I use a cork top? Another question I see. That one's across the board. I use cork tops. Most of these bottles nowadays that are food grade are rated for hot sauces and alcohol. These just happen to be the 12 ounce bottles I use. These are hot sauce bottles, bar bottles. They use them for mixed drinks and stuff like that. These are corks that come with the bottles. These are bar top corks. Most bar top corks are made for alcohol, so they can handle it. Most of them now are made of synthetic cork, which is food grade. So you don't have the same issues that you have with a standard cork. So these standard corks are made for plugging up ceramics, porcelain, teapots, all those little cute pottery, all the pottery stuff. Some people say, oh, with the corks it evaporates. I'm going to tell you this right now. If you're leaving that vanilla in there long enough for it to evaporate, your vanilla's not that great. Because this homemade vanilla don't last that long in this house. I've had these bottles on the shelves a couple years because I have a stock that I keep on hand for making my stuff. Never seen any evaporation on them. Do they breathe? I don't know. But I've never seen any evaporation. Never had any issues with these. But you need to pay attention if you're going to Amazon or any of these places to buying corks. Make sure you're buying corks that are made for for food items. I say human consumption, you're not eating them, but for food items. And get the sizing right. I've got 1,000 corks lids just like this. They're 1 millimeter too big. So they're gonna break off. You can get them in there, but you can't get them out. You gotta use a wine opener. So you gotta pay attention to the size. I typically buy the bottles with the tops and the seals, and it's cheaper that way. And then I don't have to worry about the sizing either. So I'll leave a link down below for these bottles. But yeah, you can use cork tops. It's not an issue. You can use screw tops. They make the same bottle with a screw top and a rubber deal. It all depends on what you want. I just happen to like these cork tops. They work well. There's no price difference. So if you don't like the cork tops, you could do that. Next question. All right, last question. One of the questions I get is how much do I sell my extract for? So it all depends on the time of year and the availability of the bottles, the vanilla beans. So I always tell people you need to figure out what it costs you to make it, because different times of year, especially with this COVID, everybody's doing homemaking things, so jars are hard to come by and gone way up. When I bought all my jars, thank goodness I bought them a while back, because when I bought them all, these half-gallon jars were $2.50. So I bought a few cases of them. Right now, $13. So they're expensive. I always try to figure out the price based on current retail pricing. Not sale pricing and not co-op pricing. So whatever is the normal pricing for vanilla beans, just say it's $14 an ounce. Use that pricing. If you buy them at $10 an ounce or $9 an ounce, great. Don't use that. That's more money in your pocket. Use the current price, because the next time you go to buy vanilla and that sale's not there, that's going to be the same price you're going to use. So you can keep your prices pretty much the same. What I do is, I know this half-gallon jar has 9 ounces of beans in it, and you times that, just say the current price is $14.99 an ounce. So I times that by 9, and then however much my bottles cost, I know that this half-gallon jar makes, let's just call it 4 bottles. I know it makes about 4.5 or 4 1/4. Let's just call it 4 bottles. And then you got to account for your labeling. For me, it's labeling, the wax seal, and then the tops. The tops come with the bottles. And I buy 12 bottles at a time. Well, I buy actually several cases at a time, but 12 bottles to a case. And then I take that case price, I divide it by each bottle. It gives me what each of those bottles cost. So to break it down, 1 ounce of vanilla was $14, or just call it $15. The alcohol, I figured out my price on it, and then I broke it down per the 8 ounce of alcohol, which was $5.50. The bottles cost me $1. The tops and seals cost me $1. The labels were 50 cents, and then shipping and fuel 50 cents. And I say fuel, shipping and fuel. I actually had to go to town to pick up some of this stuff. So I calculated my fuel into that cost, because I don't live in town. I'm 14 miles away. I drive a diesel truck. It took me a gallon of gas there, or a gallon of diesel there, and a gallon of diesel to get home. You're talking about $8, $9 just to go to town. So I had to calculate that in. And for this batch here, I calculated 50 cents for my fuel costs or shipping. So if you gotta calculate your shipping in there. So then what you do is you add all that up. They gave me $23.49. That's what it cost me to make one. Okay, my numbers are off a little bit. That should be 12 ounces instead of 8 ounces, because I do everything by the 12 ounces. I was working with 8 ounces before because of the standard, but for me, it's the 12 ounces. So it's $23.49 to make one 12-ounce bottle of extract. Doesn't include my labor or anything. That's just what my cost is to get it to this point here. So typical rule of thumb, double that number. So you're looking at $46.98. So this bottle, you should sell this for $50 easily. I know in the open market right now, vanilla this size is going anywhere between $65 and $98 for a bottle like this for good homemade extract. Commercial guys are selling this stuff. They're calling it pure extract for the same price, that price. So don't short sell yourself when you're trying to price your stuff out. Typically, instead of adding double, they'll add triple to it, and you'll still be within the right price range. So yeah, don't short yourself on your pricing. You're not doing anybody good. I sell mine for $40, and that depends on the pricing as far as supplies. Right now, the pricing is really high. But where I make up for it is I shop around for my beans. So if I'm getting a better deal on it, that's more money in my pocket. And the same thing with the alcohol. I calculated my alcohol prices at being $18 a bottle, because that's the normal price is $17, $18 a bottle. I get them on sale, and then I go buy it by the case, and I get them for $9.50 a bottle. So that puts a little bit more money in my pocket. Okay, I hope that explains that. So pricing, it's really up to what you guys are using. But that's how you figure it out. Best way to come up with a fair price for your customers. All right, well, we made it to the end, and I hope we got some of these basic questions and answers completed for you. I hope this helps out some of you beginners sort out some of the confusion between everybody that's given advice. So, and I know there's a lot of people doing that, some celebrities giving some advice, some chefs giving advice, and I look at them and I'm just like, that's kind of a little bit of misinformation. So anyway, if you want pure vanilla extract, follow these steps and you'll be good. So if you guys have any comments that you would like to share with me, please put them down below on this video, and we try to respond to them within 72 hours. If you got any ideas for us, put them down below. From Clement's Family Farm, we thank you, and we'll see you on the next video.